Here is a question I'd like you to think about. What image comes to your mind when you think about the Arctic? Wonderland of ice? Polar bears? Arctic explorers? Everyone has their own version of the Arctic. I have my own image as well. I'm an Arctic person. I was born in the biggest city beyond the polar circle, Murmansk, home to 300,000. I've lived all my life in the high north. My heart belongs there. When I think about the Arctic, I see people that live there. I'm also a researcher. I study Arctic, its social and economic development. I'm interested in images and narratives people have about this place. Through my research, it became clear to me that outsiders' perceptions disproportionately exclude Arctic people. I'm here to change this narrative. Arctic is mostly an ocean surrounded by 8 sovereign states having claims to Arctic resources. Faraway place that explorers used to dream about is now at the center of international attention. Why all this attention? The ice is melting, making extraction of resources easier. And there is a lot of oil and gas up there. According to best estimates, 13% of undiscovered world oil reserves and 30% of undiscovered natural gas reserves. And it's not even mentioning rare earth metals. But who creates the narrative? Who plants the image of the Arctic in your head? There are basically 2 forces that influence the way the Arctic is perceived in the world. These are geopolitical forces and the media. Geopolitically, it looks like everyone is trying to stake their claim to this area. Countries outside the Arctic are increasingly interested in our hidden riches. Non-Arctic governments produce their own Arctic strategies. Did you know that countries like South Korea, Japan, China, Germany, Spain, France, the Netherlands, the UK, and Scotland within the UK, they all have their own view on economic development and environmental protection of the Arctic. And they are so interested that often their strategies are much more comprehensive and updated more regularly than those of the Arctic states themselves. Consider the rhetoric being used. In 2018, China published its strategy paper on the Arctic, declaring itself a near-Arctic state. Does it look like China as a near-Arctic state? Let's now look at the images used by non-Arctic governments in their strategy documents. What do we see in common? They are all rather cliché. Ice, emptiness, Arctic explorers. To me, they communicate the same idea about the Arctic as a faraway place, away from civilization. Let's now look how Arctic is portrayed in the global media. In global media, there are 3, often conflicting storylines: climate change, resources extraction, and geopolitics. The media reports that the ice is melting. The place is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Most models estimate ice-free Arctic Ocean by the mid of the century in summer times. The narrative about climate change stimulates emotions towards protection of the Arctic, quite often equaling complete conservation of the place. Conversely, the media also reports on resources extraction and related economic activities. New shipping routes are being opened, for instance, along the coast of Russia, that can take journey time 2 weeks faster from east to west than through the current Suez Canal route. The third storyline has publications on the geopolitics and with stories on sovereignty, international relations, and militarization of the Arctic. When grouping these 3 storylines in all publications for the last 10 years, I found that these 3 storylines occupy 80% of all publications, with such emphasis on climate change, resources extraction, and geopolitics. The media barely mentions that there are actual people living in the Arctic. Look at this little bar. It's only 6%. These are Arctic people. I take exception to this. To me, Arctic is not some faraway, icy no man's land or repository of natural resources. It's homeland to 4.5 million people with their dreams and aspirations. People of the Arctic don't want it to be seen as one big national protected park. It seems odd to us that some far-off governments should seek so much influence on our area. And we, Arctic people, are often not included as stakeholders. Imagine a workplace where colleagues never ask you to join them for lunch. You're there, but completely invisible to them. That's how we feel, myself included. When I read these newspaper publications, I feel excluded and disconnected. And I'm not alone. We have 4.5 million people living in the Arctic. We are diverse and multicultural. I have made it my mission to create awareness about the Arctic. We have human problems in the region that the world needs to be told about. These are demographic, education, climate change, and poverty problems. Let's now look at some of these challenges in the Nordic and Russian part of the Arctic. The biggest concern is population decline, especially in the Russian part of the Arctic. Consider my hometown, Murmansk. 500,000 people used to live there during Soviet Union time. Now it's just 300,000. Population decline has a profound effect in the long run. People grow older, and systems struggle to support them. Even bigger worry is youth decline. Fewer babies are born, and young adults migrate away in pursuit of better jobs and education opportunities. The region is losing in attractiveness, especially young women are living small, remote Arctic communities. In science, we use sex population ratio that reflects the number of males per 100 females. If this ratio is higher than 105, it's already considered skewed. In some northernmost municipalities in Norway, it is as high as 122. It's hard to find a partner and start a family in such situation. Another concern is that males are considerably less educated than females. The level of education is one of the major predictors of life expectancy. If you happen to be a male and born in the Russian part of the Arctic, your life expectancy would be as short as 60 years. We have poverty in developed societies. Measured as a risk of poverty rate, every 7th in the north of Finland is poor. Every 4th in the north of Russia is poor too. We in the Arctic experience consequences of climate change firsthand. Extreme weather events cause our infrastructure, such as roads and bridges, to collapse. Alternating weather patterns create thick layer of ice that reindeer can't break to get nourishment. In 2019, 200 reindeers starved to death in Svalbard, Norwegian part of the Arctic. So when we are in the Arctic, faced as we are with these challenges, demographic challenges, education, as well as climate change problems, here, that certain economic activities should be ceased, how are we supposed to react? To be quiet, to protest, to unite forces? The people of the Arctic are increasingly standing up and trying to be heard. In 2019, indigenous peoples of Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Russia published their own Arctic strategy, which is unlike national strategies that are targeted at protection of sovereign interest. Sami strategy is human-oriented. It calls for co-design and co-production of Western and indigenous knowledge. In the Arctic, we have generation of new businesses that are innovative and are built on ethical, sustainable principles. These are examples in the food industry that create products from locally collected mushrooms, herbs, and berries, or companies that build on innovative experiences, such as Tree Hotel, Igloo, and Snow Hotel. Also, in the European part of the Arctic, we have an abundance of renewable energy, which is very attractive for such energy-intensive businesses as data centers, steelmaking, and battery cell production. We can add value and create thousands of jobs in this high region of the north. Examples of innovative businesses give me hope. I want to see Arctic as a place where people live and thrive, not an arena for media or political battles. For this to be achieved in reality, I call on the media to include Arctic experts and local people in their media coverage. I call on politicians of both Arctic and non-Arctic states to include Arctic people as stakeholders. Development should be inclusive and benefit local people. And I call on you to help me spread my message. Arctic needs a different image and narrative, not just a polar bear land resource base, but also as a place that many people call their home. We have the right to diversify our economic activity. Remember, it's not our economic activity that is raising your sea levels, but it's rather your activities that are melting our rice. If we listen and learn from each other, then we can have the Arctic as a model of the most sustainable development to be used anywhere on Earth.